Theresa Chavez, Nina Diaz, welcome. Welcome to From Another Zero. It's a pleasure to have you. Esta es su casa. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're excited to be here.
I'm very excited too because my brain doesn't have that space anymore to have new stuff come in, but it's exciting. So what brings us here today is the concert or the event, because there's going to be a couple of activities happening. Adobe Punk, the concert. Before we dive into this, can each of you introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourselves for people that are not familiar?
I'm Theresa Chavez. I am the director of Adobe Punk, the whole project. I'm also the producing artistic director of About Productions, which is the company. It's a theater company that produced the theater work a couple of years ago called Adobe Punk. And now I am working with Nina, which we did 2 years ago as well, on the songs for the show. And we're featuring them in a concert version, which is what we're doing now, Adobe Punk, the concert.
Mm-hmm. And I'm formerly the lead singer, guitar player of a band called Girl in a Coma. We were on Blackheart Records, that's Joan Jett's label. And now I'm a solo artist. And I've been working with Teresa since we did Evangeline, the Queen of Make Believe. I was in the neighborhood band.
Yeah, that was a project we did with Los Lobos songwriters, Louis Perez and David Hidalgo. And it was based in 1968. Mm-hmm. So it was set around a young girl from East LA who wants to be a go-go dancer. And she's sneaking off to West Hollywood to work there. And there's a band in the show, the entire show. And we were featuring the songbook of Los Lobos.
And Gabby Moreno did it previously. And then I stepped in to do this version. And that's when I heard them talking about Adobe Punk. And I was like, oh, I want to be part of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So from what because there's going to be, y'all are going to have the concert in LA and in Pasadena. There's 6 dates, 3 and 3. But there's going to be music, the concert, but there's also going to be some interviews happening about punk, correct?
Yes. The Punkcast mini sessions, which will happen, those will kick off each evening's show. Mm-hmm. And it'll be sessions, interviews between Jessica Schwartz, who has a podcast called Punkcast, Punkast. And she also teaches punk history, among other things, at UCLA. And she's going to be interviewing punk trailblazers, most of whom are still active in the punk scene as musicians or historians or record label owners, basically. Mm-hmm. And Nina is the first one. She's our first punk trailblazer. And that will also have Jesse Velo of Los Illegals, which was a seminal East LA punk band. We'll have Mike Watt of the Minutemen. We have Lisa Fancher of Frontier Records, Teresa Covarrubias of The Brat, and Jimmy Alvarado of Eastside Punk's video series.
Mm-hmm. So also the concert is set, is it kind of like is there a theatricality to it too? It's set in the 80s. Did I get that correct? How does that going to look?
Yeah, so of course this isn't the 80s, right? But we will have those vibes going on there. Like some pedals that I will use in the session weren't even invented yet in the 80s. Even our attire will be kind of close to the 80s though.
We're emulating the 80s because this is not the theater piece.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, let's present the Adobe Punk band in 2024 and what would it feel like and look like. And of course the songs are punk songs that would have been written in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And but in a way interpreted for 2024 on some level. So it's a little bit of a what we like to say meta reality of it's it's the band in contemporary time, but the band is from the show that's set in the early 1980s. And the musicians, the two other musicians along with Nina, are in a sense, in punk attire from the period, but yet they are contemporary and they are talking about their characters, because the other two musicians were in the original theater production. Giselle Edasami, who plays a Lebanese American young woman, in the show, in the Adobe Punk production. And then DX Machina, AKA Isaac Cruz, he played Manny, a Mexican-American young person who was squatting in this house with his fellow bandmates. And that's the Adobe part of it. The house is one of the oldest Adobe homes in LA, and it's now set in Bell Gardens, I should say. The house was a real house that my family had. There were two Adobe houses in Bell Gardens, one of which is still there, and it's the oldest house in LA County. The other house actually burnt down in the early 80s, and it's sort of, the story's loosely based on that.
I didn't know there were Adobe houses in LA. Wow.
Oh yeah, there's when you start really looking for them, you realize that they are dotted all throughout the landscape.
And now, genre-wise, how can you each explain what punk and punk music is?
We were just talking about that the other day.
Go ahead.
It's like punk. Your attitude is kind of like do it yourself. You figure it out. Open to a variety of people. People that might be the misfits. Like it's a community where it's like no judgment, no rules, and it's a lot of freedom. It's like a dirty version of the 60s, I guess, of like free love and stuff, but with like different colored hair.
It was also at the time, it was a reaction to the kind of music that had come out of the 70s. And in a way, I find that there's a link between the 60s and the 80s, because the 60s was very protest and politically driven, and a lot of punk music was also politically driven. And in a personal way, all things are political. The notion of the personal is political. But there was also people that were like anti-Reagan at the time and had that as part of their songwriting and their presentation, in a sense. And punk, musically comes out of London, and the New York scene was basically coming up around the same time as the LA scene. There were really some major cities that had punk scenes. Like I said, London, New York, LA, San Francisco. But there were punk scenes in almost every major city. Yeah, and Berlin, of course.
The songs themselves, too, it kind of took a different approach to the structure of a song. Like some are just a minute long sometimes. Like a set list that could have like 15 songs is just like 20 minutes long. And anybody could do it. That's the fun part. And then it's those people that stuck to it that, their writing kind of changed throughout the times. But it's something that you could really do to bond with your friends and stuff more too.
Yeah, that was the punk music attitude of like anyone can play, whether you know how to play or not, whether you've ever picked up an instrument or not. So it's very inclusive in that way. And there was also a fair amount of women playing, because there was just kind of like an open, in a sense, system. There wasn't like, you had to look a certain way or be a certain gender to be involved in the punk scene.
It's like Alice Baggs was like one of the first, especially of a Latin artist, of a woman, to just be, even in her skirt, just be messy and dirty, but still claim it with her strength and her individuality. Yeah, she still inspires me today too.
It was a very, mixed race, mixed ethnicity community as well. Especially in the period that we're kind of setting the show. It did become a little more violent and more like skinhead, white, young guys, using their physicality to be, violent on the like pogoing, but in a violent way, But that was a little bit later, you know, as the 80s kind of went on.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a period where, you know, women felt safe to be part of it and to be in the venues,
Mhm.
etc. So in our show, the original Adobe Punk is 2 women and a guy. That's the band. And our band today for the concert is 2 women and a guy.
Yeah.
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 It's so interesting. And this had, like you mentioned, Theresa, you had it in 2022, or there was an iteration of it in 2022.
Mhm.
We're having
Right.
one in 2024, and y'all are getting ready for something in 2025.
Correct. Yes. So we're doing this concert to give us an opportunity to write more songs, to expand the narrative of the piece, and to kind of get back into it again, because it's been 2 years. And that was our, in a sense, pandemic version. It was at the early part of 2022. So
Because the original didn't really have that much music to begin with, right? It kind of evolved.
yeah. Oh, the
little more. Yeah, like
the
the very,
very
very
original,
original.
the work in progress had very
Yeah.
little, you know, because the narrative was different.
Yeah.
And it was like towards the end of that work in progress script is when the songs started coming in.
Mhm.
And then we kind of changed the conceit of the show, which was that the group, the 3 of them, are in the house already when the show starts. They're already squatting in the house. And squatting was a thing at the time where a lot of bands would squat in abandoned buildings, you know, whatever they might be, and kind of take them over and even live in there and rehearse in there. And it goes with the DIY
Yeah.
aesthetic or ideas, or, you know, anyone can do it. We're just going to, you know, take over and bring our stuff in and be creative in this creative space we're creating. You know?
And it's going to be one of the topics for the interviews as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So the topics in the show, or the topics for the, I'm sorry, for the Punkcast, come from the show, like the punk ethos and the geography, I should say, of LA punk. Because a lot of people think, oh, punk, LA punk, it's Hollywood only. But actually, punk, there were punk scenes all over. There was a punk scene in San Pedro. There was a punk scene.
Wasn't there like a Chinese restaurant or something?
There's a punk scene downtown,
Yeah.
you know, Madame Wong's and the Hong Kong Cafe. There was a punk scene in East LA, even in Southeast LA. So it's also kind of a homage to that notion that, yeah, you could have a punk, you know, punk musicians in Bell Gardens even.
Yeah, it's so interesting because is it with punk, like, I don't know, East Side, you know, that type of thing, where I'm assuming that also the sound and the songs would come from experience and what is happening and context, like you mentioned, and that's where maybe the differences would come in.
Yeah, in some way, like the songs are, there's one song that's about how they discover or what they learn when they discover that the house is a historic adobe. So, and it's called Not to Scale. And it's about what happened with the families that own these houses when when this area became the US, and they lost control of their homes because the United States said, well, your maps aren't to scale, and so you can't prove where your land begins and ends.
Yeah, Teresa, she wrote and writes the lyrics, and then I come in with the music, and then we work together for the finished product. So it's very easy to sing her lyrics because of it's like a poem at first, and then I kind of morph it to fit into the structure of a punk kind of vibe, which is music I already listened to anyway. So it's a perfect match for us. And I've learned a lot more about Los Angeles than I know of my own city. I'm from San Antonio, so I know a lot more of Los Angeles than my own home.
Yeah, it seems like it's a huge, aside from the music aspect and enjoying it, it's like a learning experience as well.
Definitely.
So for people that are followers of yours, they're also going to see new material.
Oh yeah, like most of the songs are original songs, either from the original theater work or the new songs that we're presenting. And we're also presenting playing some
cover songs.
covers that relate to the narrative of Adobe Punk as well, that either are mentioned in the narrative, because they talk a lot about the bands that inspire them. So we're doing an X cover. X is the name of the band. And
well, Eve of Destruction, the Turtles version of it,
which is a 60s protest song, but is referenced in the show. And so we thought, let's do the cover of it.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it actually is very much a punk kind of song.
It is,
you know.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really interesting set, I think. And we're also in between. We're going to show some video from the show, as well as talk about the songs and how they fit into this narrative or this history that we're referring to.
So it's gonna be like a regular show, but with like the banter. You know, when people say stuff in between songs, it'll still flow and be organic, but give you a little bit more information about the show itself, the play, but just enough to make you want to come to 2025 though.
Of course. I mean, yeah, totally. I would want to see more.
And in 2025, we're going to do the full production again with the expanded narrative, and we're going to write even more songs.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, that'll be at Plaza de la Raza next March. And we're also going to have an art exhibition, and we're going to have some presentations by the UCLA Punk Archive. And we're really kind of create some interesting engagement events that also speak to the content of Adobe Punk.
Wow. It's wild to me because looking back and now with this new information for me that we're discussing, I grew up in the 80s, and then being, continuing to grow up, I was a kid in the 80s, and then being young in the a teenager or whatever in the 90s, the 80s were so crucified at that point. And it was like, oh my God, the music, the fashion, the hair, everything was terrible, blah, 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 blah. And now you talk to kids, and they're like, oh my God, growing up in the 80s, that's so awesome. And it's like, how this wheel moves, right? So I
think it just depends on the music choice in the 80s too, because there are some outfits that are like, what? But then of course in the new wave or punk scene, that's stuff that people wear to like when we were picking out clothes for the photo shoot, it was like, this is stuff I already just wear all the time.
It's all coming back. It's all coming back. And it's so awesome to see this now, because again, my reference always is like, I love the 80s. I love everything about it. It was my first decade. So to now see this sort of reclaiming, I see it that way, is even more exciting as to, for me, my parents with the 60s and 70s, that, oh my God, the Beatles and Elvis and everything that was happening. We have that like relation now, I feel.
It's crazy that now on the oldies channel back at home, it used to be like 60s music. Now they're playing like 80s music. And I'm like,
that's considered oldies.
So I'm older now.
Old, right? Yeah, right.
It's oldie now. Okay, so going back, then the event is going to start with the Punkcast interview, and people that are depending. This is March 15th, 16th, and 17th in LA. It's at the Frida Kahlo Theater.
Yes, the first weekend is at the Frida Kahlo Theater, Friday, Saturday at 8, Sunday at 6:30. And then the second weekend, which is the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, at the Lineage Performing Arts Center in Pasadena. Friday and Saturday at 8, Sunday at 6:30. There's also a special event on Sunday the 24th, the last show at 5 o'clock, which is a fundraiser that has some special aspects to it. You can find it all online at aboutpd.org/adobe-punk.
Is that $5 off still going on?
Oh, yeah. And if you want to offer your viewers, we can use the Nina 5.
Yeah, Nina 5, and you get $5 off.
Yes. So if you go to the website I just mentioned, it'll take you to the ticket portal, and you use the code Nina 5, Nina 5, and you'll get $5 off.
Yeah. And I also saw that there's discount for veterans
Yes.
and
Those are already $5 off for student punk,
mm-hmm.
veteran punk, senior punk.
I like that.
and Nina 5.
And Nina 5.
Yeah.
It's like Johnny 5,
Yes.
but Nina 5.
Yeah. So if you're not a veteran, student, or senior, you can use Nina 5.
Perfect.
And you'll
And
see it on
then
the portal there too. The ones I just mentioned, all those.
mhm. And the interviews, just so everybody kind of grasp it, there's going to be different interviews happening on the different days, and that is also specified
Correct.
on the website. So if
Yes.
you are a follower and you want to see a certain interview, then check it out that it meshes
Right.
with the date that
Yes.
is happening. And just to start wrapping up, the how would you describe your following age-wise? Do you get a mix, or do you think that this is going to be like something that has to do with nostalgia, not just because of this 80s fact that we're talking about, but because of 2022? And that things have been so different because of the pandemic. So from 2022, as you were mentioning that it's to now, things have changed and we're kind of coming back, but then we're left. It's weird. We're like day by day. So is there going to be this nostalgia factor?
There's a little bit of that. Last time we had an intergenerational audience or multi-generational audience. We had folks who were, lived the period. We had folks who were bringing their adult kids or their teenagers who were getting into punk music. We had even some young people come on their own who were into punk music. And it was at Plaza, the original, the one in 2022. So I would say it was generally kind of an East Side audience, but age-wise, it was, our audiences tend to be mixed anyway, but it was also mixed for that.
Awesome. So here in this space named From Another Zero, it's named that way because you just don't start from zero. After your experience and your tools, you start from another zero every time you restart.
Oh,
so
wow.
we ask our guests some of that. We have many other zeros in life. What have been one of your most memorable other zeros that you can share with us?
Well, I mean, punk was another zero for me. It preceded my creating this theater company with a group of other folks. I'm a co-founder of the company that's in its 35th year. And, that led me to go into the arts in a certain kind of way and to believe that I had a creative voice. And I could say that was, one of my other zeros. And there's others, of course. But relative to this conversation, it was a seminal moment for me to participate in that culture and that community.
Yeah, I think definitely another zero for me was just beginning the theater journey with About Productions and Theresa with Evangeline, and to now where I drove here with my best friend and I have a car and I like driving in LA because it's a game and it's cool. So this is totally another zero for me too. Like I feel it like it's like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
I get it. And then
I agree. And I would add another zero for me is working with Nina and having this incredible, just very natural, like we just are a great team.
Yeah, very similar working wise. It's like 2 in the morning. It's like, okay, you're still up too.
Okay,
cool.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. And just like really being respectful and very creative, and trusting each other's creativity and having a lot of respect for each other's creativity. So
definitely,
it's been
a good another zero
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's awesome. So again, going back, March 15, 16, 17th, LA, 22, 23, 24, Pasadena. So check it all out. We're going to put the website here and all those
Great.
links.
Thank you.
Anything that you two would like to add?
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of really interesting music. It's an interesting sound. The songs are really provocative and innovative.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nina is amazing as a
Aw.
performer. I mean, it's a treat just to have Nina be fronting the band. I mean,
It's
her fans know, but if you have never heard Nina live, you're in for a super treat.
Yeah. And the actors, Giselle and DX, have been doing great, you know, because they learned to play their instruments
For the show 2
show.
years ago.
And
yeah.
now as they're learning these new songs, they're catching on. So I'm very proud of them. So definitely worth checking out the whole thing as a whole. They're just doing so good. It's worth seeing for sure.
And there's free parking.
Oh, there you go. There's free parking. We should have started with the free parking, right? Like there's free parking.
Both venues have free parking. So, you know, that's worth $1 million, right?
Absolutely. That is absolutely, especially in LA.
I'm learning that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's dedicated parking. So there's a lot in front of each of the venues.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for the time and the space and sharing this journey with us. It sounds that it's going to be an amazing set of shows, because I feel that each show is going to bring totally something different, and depending also on the audience and everything. And that's really cool and very much needed, I believe. You know, sometimes the arts, they're not credited as they should, and they do so much, and it's just life-changing. And that's also why we do what we do, and we're very happy to have you here. And this is your home, so come back whenever. 2025 March.
Sure.
I expect to see you here.
And we expect to see you at one of the shows.
Yeah, I really hope I can. My husband loves, he likes punk. So I think that when he sees this, he's going to be like, why did you tell me?
Yeah, please bring him.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll try to make it and talk over there with the people. And hopefully if I do, I'll say hello. I'll make sure to say hello to you both.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you so much. Great success. Yes, for what is to come in 2025. And remember, everybody, that here we just don't start from zero. We start from another zero. Until the next time.
Bye.